We talk a bit about the impact of the absence of health care on individuals with HIV and AIDS and how expensive it can be. What can you share with people who do not have HIV and AIDS and why this epidemic should matter to them and why they should be concerned about how this illness affects their fellow citizens?
Well, I think the most important thing for us to understand is that none of us are safe until all of us are safe, and that this is an epidemic that impacts all of us. There's probably no one in this country that doesn't know someone who is living with or who has lost someone to HIV. You may not know it, but we're all impacted by this disease, and the response to it is a responsibility of all of us.
Mm-hmm. Deaths are still happening in the United States.
Yeah.
That's part of the news. Mm-hmm. And in order for deaths not to happen, people need to have access to care. Mm-hmm. The story that is important is that those deaths are not being heard by the person who's turning 13 today, or the person who's turning 16 today. My late partner's death, his anniversary was on Sunday, 30 years ago. We're not hearing those stories, and so until we have that vaccine, no one is actually safe, because it's still possible to acquire HIV, and unless you're taking your medications, it's possible for you to still acquire AIDS and become very sick and die.
Could I say a word about women?
Sure.
Because I think the notion of men having sex with men, and of course that is where most of the issue is, has tended to obliterate how dangerous this is, what the high risks are for women, and what they need to protect themselves. We also have abysmal ignorance among girls and women about their exposure to the virus, and there needs to be real deep understanding with girls from the beginning, and with women who are exposed to men with HIV and may not know what to do or how to protect themselves, and how safe sex applies to men and women.
Congresswoman, how can we get this message targeted towards girls so that they grow up knowing what they can do to protect themselves?
Well, the very same people who have done, I say, a credible job in teaching girls how to protect themselves against pregnancy have a job to do with the virus as well. And it seems to me those go hand in hand, because either one can get you, shall we say, in trouble.
Absolutely. And what other areas are you seeing, Phill, that perhaps aren't getting the attention they need? We've seen girls, we've seen women, we've seen people in rural communities. Are there other populations?
Certainly, one of the populations that does not get enough attention is the impact that HIV and AIDS is having on trans women, and the violence that's been enacted against trans women all over this country. You know, trans women are disproportionately impacted by HIV, particularly trans women of color, and that's inextricably connected to discrimination and stigma. And one of the overlying factors that inhibit our ability to fight HIV is discrimination and stigma, whether we're talking about men who have sex with men, or whether we're talking about women, particularly women of color, or whether we're talking about trans women, or whether we're talking about young people. You know, we have to be aggressive in addressing the issues around stigma, and we need to also make sure that we're addressing the needs of all of us. Nobody can be left behind when it comes to this epidemic.
Absolutely nobody. And did you want the final word here, Jesse?
The final word is that we have so much more to do. We have so much work to do in the South. We have so much work to do with some very key populations, with women, with the trans community, with youth, especially under 24. That work is not yet done, and in this environment, we all can be part of the political will to make it change.
Indeed.